So fabulous. Thanks, everyone. And I'm going to kind of just jump in and I'm going to set the tone a little bit for the conversation that we're going to have today. And it is very much a conversation. I'm going to just be facilitating a three-way discussion between myself and our two guests. But before I get into that, I want to just cover a couple of elements so that we're all on the same page. You know, our belief at Fetola, and certainly just in terms of the work that we do working with entrepreneurs like yourselves, is that market access is essentially an outcome of being ready, of market readiness. It's a journey. It's not something that you just sort of go out and start looking for new customers or clients and, you know, the rain starts to pour. It would be wonderful if that were the case, but it usually starts a lot further back. And it starts with understanding who you're trying to sell to, understanding what's important to them and making sure that you tick those boxes. And that's why this definition on the screen works quite nicely. You know, market access is really an outcome, or it's what happens when your product or service is market ready and it's aligned to what the market needs and there's a demand for it. So a lot of it's about readiness and about being ready. And we're going to unpack that a little bit today. Just what does it mean to become market ready? What are some of the things you need to factor in? How do you essentially increase your chances of being able to access new customers, new customer territories, new geographical areas, and just generally expand and grow? So if we talk about market readiness, what are we talking about? It's essentially when your product or service meets the needs of the customer or buyers that you've identified as having the most potential to become a customer or buyer of yours. And that means having the right product at the right price, being able to deliver consistently, the right quantities, being reliable, being consistent. And this doesn't really matter if you sell product or deliver a service. It's about capacity. It's about reliability. It's about matching what you offer with what the market or your target market in particular is looking for and resonates with. So if I look at this picture on the screen, you can see that essentially there's a lot of different areas that make up market readiness that help you essentially lay the foundation or the platform for servicing the market, for accessing new markets. I'm not going to go into all of those, but you can see that it's a multifaceted piece of work that one needs to do. It requires a lot of thinking, a lot of strategy, a lot of assessing and being honest with yourself around your gaps, around the areas that you need to work on as a business, what I like to call the holes in your bucket. What are the things that you need to fix so that when the opportunities present themselves, you're in a strong position to take them? And that's really the crux, is that opportunities come and go. It's how one make sure that you're ready for those opportunities that ultimately leads to long-term success. And we're going to unpack that a little bit when we chat particularly to Liz, our entrepreneurial guest. So there's a number of different areas or elements that are important to cover, and I'll just quickly work through these. Essentially, market readiness is multifaceted, but it all starts with product market fit, which is ultimately the degree to which your product satisfies a demand in the market or your service. How needed is what you're offering out there? Do you understand what your customer needs? And how can you lay the foundation? Because this is essentially what it's all about, to scale your operations, to attract investment potentially, and to achieve long-term success. It all starts with making sure that your product or service is suitable and well and fits well with the target market that you've identified. The second area that one needs to consider is around costing and pricing. This is definitely an area that we see a lot in our programs is a challenge for many SMEs. You know, you tend to perhaps wing it a little bit in this area, with all love and respect. It's an area that I'm quite pedantic about personally, but essentially it starts with knowing your costs. Do you know without a shadow of a doubt what it costs you to deliver a certain product or service into the market? You cannot negotiate. You cannot even set a price if you don't understand that. So that's your baseline. What does this actually cost me to make, and how do I work it out? And then things like, have you got different pricing levels for different customer segments that you might service? Because you're not always going to be dealing with the same type of customer. For example, a B2B model, business to business, is very different potentially from a B2C model where you're selling direct to the consumer. And you need to have pricing that meets all those different customer needs. That's a big part of being market ready. The next one is about how you show up in the world, your marketing materials, your collateral, your corporate identity. If your customer was going to Google you, if you approach someone, a potential customer, and the very first thing they're going to do is type your name into Google, what would they find is an important question. Would they be impressed? Would they be a little bit skeptical? Would they find your deepest, darkest secrets splashed all over social media? One needs to consider these kinds of things. And how powerful is your corporate identity? Does it add value to your brand? Does it detract from your brand? That's a big part of market readiness as well, particularly if you're in, things like fashion or design. It becomes really, really critical. Next element that we're going to consider is around capacity. How ready are you for that opportunity as and when it arises? We've seen a lot of businesses actually get themselves into trouble because it's kind of careful what you wish for because you might get it. So they landed that big client and suddenly they don't have the cash flow or the ability, the production capacity or the hands on deck that they need to service that client effectively. And that leads me to the next point, which is around compliance. Have you got all the necessary quality standards in place? This obviously differs from industry to industry, but some of the important things to consider are, for example, if you're in the food game, HACCP certification. If you're a manufacturer or provider of services, ISO 9001 and the various ISO standards are really important. But it goes even further back. It might be as simple as a particular customer can't engage with you unless you're VAT registered. Or if your business isn't formally registered, they're not able to do work with you. So, it starts with general compliance, which we all have to comply with as business owners or entrepreneurs. And then it becomes more industry specific and specialized. And your job is to make sure that you understand compliance, understand how it can potentially open up new areas of the market for you. A great example is in the construction sector where there's CIDB levels. So many of you in the room would know that. And as one progresses up the chain and attains higher CIDB levels, so too can you then access different and larger projects. So compliance becomes a very key component of market access. And then the next one is certainly last but not least, your ability to finance the deal. So what happens when you get that huge contract or you get listed with Takealot or you get listed with Woolworths or Pick and Pay or a large corporate, you win a tender perhaps. Now you've got to pay for it. And quite often have to negotiate up to 60, 90, even 120-day payment terms and be able to make sure that the wheels keep rolling smoothly whilst you wait for your money. So it's about understanding your cash flow cycle. You might need to consider things like invoice factoring or invoice discounting in order to get paid quicker. You need to be conscious about negotiating payment terms that make sense for you. And you also need to have all your financials and ducks in a row so that as and when you need to try and access finance, get a bank loan, get bridging finance from a finance house, you have the necessary paperwork in place. You don't want to start doing that when you've got the order pending, because then you end up taking short-term decisions out of desperation that are not usually in your best interests. So those are some of the key elements that we're going to chat about a little bit more as we converse with our two guests. And that leads me into the introduction of our first guest. We're very delighted to have Yaeesh from Takealot in the room with us. He's head of their marketplace and very, very experienced in the realm of both online selling, customer experience, and really been a driving force around Takealot's growth for the last number of years. So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to welcome Yaeesh. And how's it, Yaeesh? Great to have you. And maybe you can just very quickly introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks, Anton, for the welcome. Thanks for having me on this webinar. It's quite a pleasure to be here, to be able to engage and meet with many other businesses and entrepreneurs. It's quite thrilling for me. For everyone, my name is Yaeesh Moosa. I'm the head of marketplace at Takealot.com. I've been working in and around e-commerce for the past 5 years, most of it in marketplaces and in and around e-commerce at Takealot.com. I am extremely excited to be able to be part of this phenomenal industry, which has so much growth opportunity, transformative opportunities for people's lives, and I'm really honored to be here, and I hope we can get some value out of my insights today. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Yaeesh. Yeah, delighted to have you. For those that don't know, Takealot does do a lot of work in sort of providing easy access onto their marketplace for small businesses. They actively have a strategy to try and give people opportunities to sell through the channel. So we'll unpack that a little bit. But maybe my first question for you today, Yaeesh, is what do large enterprises, large organizations, large retailers, corporates like yourself, like Takealot, look for most when you're considering a new supplier or vendor? So a small business or an SME potentially approaches you. They want to either be listed on marketplace or they want to provide other services to Takealot. What are some of the things that you would look for?
At the core of any business, and Takealot.com really epitomizes this, is delighting customers and providing value and newness into the customer base. And whether it is a service or whether it's a product, you always want to be as customer-centric and customer-focused as possible. So when we look at potential suppliers and sellers, our focus prioritizes on reliability, product quality, and competitive pricing. We look for partners who can consistently provide high-quality products that meet customer expectations, ensuring that our platform's reputation as well as the reputation of the sellers is maintained. You want reliability across a huge spectrum, so it covers reliability in fulfilling orders, accuracy and timelines, as well as reliability in product quality, consistency of experience that the consumer has. It's extremely important to ensure that competitive pricing is understood. It helps attract a broader customer base, ensuring that the platform and the vendors can achieve healthy margins. You spoke a lot about knowing your price and your cost. It's extremely important. And I think it's more entry level, but it should be mentioned: adherence to compliance and regulatory standards. It's non-negotiable, ensuring that all products are safe and that they meet safety and quality guidelines is extremely important. When you drill down a little bit deeper, I think what we are looking for as retailers or large corporations is uniqueness. There's a lot of space for commoditized items, but what consumers are looking for is something that speaks personally to them, and you find that in uniqueness, and you find that in innovative ways of understanding consumers and matching to their needs. I think in a nutshell, that's what we look for most.
Fantastic. So maybe give us an idea or sense of, from Takealot's perspective, what products sell well, particularly those that, if we can kind of categorize them as being supplied by smaller businesses to the marketplace, SMEs. What 2 or 3 products generally move really well versus those that perhaps are not as effective or not as appropriate for that kind of channel?
Yeah, success on Takealot often comes from selling products that align with consumer trends and demands. Within the marketplace ourselves, we've seen that we have been so agile in the ability to react to consumer trends. We saw that when we had the COVID pandemic, our ability to pivot and be focused on health. And then we moved into a phase of load shedding in our ability to pivot into energy requirements. So it's all about aligning with consumer demands and trends at a particular point in time. If I could say, you know, certain products do well, but if you try and sell face masks on Takealot, you probably won't have the success today that you had a few years ago, and that's the case. So there is no simple answer, but within Takealot, we're quite fortunate. We have such a wide category base. Technology, accessories, health, wellness, home essentials, beauty, large appliances. We cover a lot. So every little category has its niche and has its opportunity with which to grow into. We look, you know, certain categories tend to perform well due to their broader appeal and the increasing consumer interest in those areas. So anything related to technology is a growing aspect as people get more online, get more comfortable with using online. You know, you also see that current trends like load shedding, as I mentioned previously, we look for those, and those are where consumer trends are met. Products that offer a unique value proposition are extremely important to us. So where they are hard to find or hard to replicate the value proposition that they provide, those do extremely well. Within our local market, currently, we're seeing that the trends towards things like eco-friendly are quite high. Everyone is very conscious of the environment, ensuring that the products, the packaging, the way that it's manufactured, even the sourcing of the raw materials is done in an eco-friendly way, in a sustainable way, resonates with consumers and allows them to feel more comfortable in purchasing those products. And one thing that's close to Takealot.com in my heart and to all entrepreneurs should be is locally manufactured and locally produced goods. And we like to follow the value chain, you know, right up to design. So we're looking for locally designed products and innovation that's happening locally, and then the value chain follows through into manufacturing. And that's the best way to support and to accelerate growth in our ecosystem. So we align very much to the national agenda of supporting local and trying to find the best way to have local products sold locally. But ultimately, success involves understanding customer needs and having a standout product that consumers can find and relate to.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I was going to ask you about the local component and how prevalent and important that is, because I have noticed on Takealot that there seems to be increasingly local brands. I mean, it's always been quite prevalent, but it seems to be quite a strong focus at the moment. And in terms of sort of finding this trend data or this analysis, you know, are there any tips you can give to entrepreneurs who want to try and align their product or service a bit more closely with the trends that are happening? I mean, you guys must, I would assume, have an internal or certainly alignment with trend forecasters and that kind of thing. But where would the typical entrepreneur go to try and find out where things are headed or which way the wind is blowing, essentially?
Yeah, I think that it's quite tricky, to be honest, as a startup small entrepreneur. There are many organizations out there that do market research, look at trends, engage with different businesses, organizations, and role players in the environment. But those tend to be really expensive reports to purchase. They date very quickly, and it's probably out of reach of most entrepreneurs, startup entrepreneurs. And that's where we advocate for things like aggregation and platforms, because being part of the Takealot marketplace allows you access into this type of information, where we share information about what's trending on our within our consumers, what are they searching for, what's doing well and what isn't. That allows you to get the benefits of the larger platform and be able to gain insights from that. So that is aggregating onto another platform and building networks in and around that platform that give you more insights. And then I think we're seeing that a lot of technology is enabling a lot more. So it's about getting close to tools like Google and Facebook and all those places where people search for things that they are looking for. That's a wonderful place to access. I think it's the most commonly used form of finding customer insights is through social media, because there's just so many people on social media, and when you have this mix of supply and demand on social media, it creates a nice environment for data and information sharing. Ultimately, though, it's very important for any business to understand exactly who their potential consumer is. And that's the starting point. So if your consumer is a particular type of person, if we use an example, your consumer is someone who is a student, for example, then engage with students. Then go and get close to your consumer, find the students that and do your own research to understand your consumer. Because if you can't get close to your consumer, can't engage with them, then trying to randomly find products which will suit them will be a very challenging exercise.
Great, thanks. That's a great answer. So there was one question that I'm going to throw at you quickly from the audience. Someone asked if does Takealot collect from the supplier, or how does the fulfillment process work? Maybe just a very high level overview.
Yeah, we have multiple different models that we have when it comes to fulfillment and logistics within Takealot.com, especially our marketplace. So we have models that allow sellers to drop products off at our warehouses. We have models that allow sellers to have their items collected from their facilities by us. And we also have fulfillment models that allow sellers to use third-party couriers. In the works, we have a few more drop-off opportunities that are coming soon. So we do collect, not always. We also do allow them to drop off at our DCs, but not always. Our approach is, and this has been the experience that we've had being the incumbent player in e-commerce and marketplace for so many years, we've had a lot of learning. And what we've understood is that the entrepreneur from the supplier side is extremely diverse. We've got a range of sizes of entrepreneurs who are looking to play in the market. So that could be size as in the amount of products that they have, from upwards of 10,000 to some that have just a handful, to the size of their products, their revenue turnover from millions of rands per month to some really small ones. Geographically, they are quite spread out all over South Africa. So what we've learned is that there is no one model that suits for marketplaces and for all sellers. So our approach is to develop multiple opportunities that sellers and entrepreneurs can choose from that best suits their particular environment. So I'll give you a simple example. We have some sellers that have warehouses that are within walking distance of our DC facilities. So from an operational and economic perspective, it makes most sense for them to pick the products up and put it in a bakkie or even on a trolley and walk it down to our DC and deliver. That's the cheapest, fastest way of getting products from a seller to the consumer. And so us having, okay, so that's example number one. Then you have a second example of a seller who's way out in rural Northern Cape, cannot physically get the products themselves. They require professional courier services. And our business is set up to be able to best serve both of those types of sellers, and then all in between. And our strategy is to continuously engage with entrepreneurs, understanding where the pain points are, and continuously develop and bring more logistic solutions into the market.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thanks for that answer. I think we answered the question effectively. I'm going to quickly share my screen again now. I just want to introduce our next guest. So just give me a second to share screen. Okay, there we are. And okay, so thanks, Yaeesh. Our next guest is, just let me know when it's up. Okay, there we go. Liz, Letsoalo of Masodi Organics. Liz is an alumni of the Tolawana program that's Fetola runs in partnership with the SAB Foundation and has for many years. She's a highly experienced entrepreneur and a real dynamo, as you're about to find out. And also the founder of a really fast-growing, up-and-coming brand of beauty products and related sort of wellness products. She sells, as you can see on the screen, through all the major important sort of channels that one would with a brand like that. She has been very, very effective in building the brand, in creating awareness, in scaling quite quickly, actually. And that's some of the conversation that I'd like to have with Liz today. So welcome, Liz. Lovely to have you.
Thank you so much for the welcome, Anton, and hi, everyone. Very happy to be on the call as well with Yaeesh and everyone, as well as the Fetola team. Yeah, it's feeling more like family as time goes. So in brief, my name is Liz Letsoalo. I'm the founder and CEO of Masodi Organics. And as Anton has mentioned, I run a beauty and wellness brand that's on Takealot, I will say. So Takealot was the first commercial space or platform that gave Masodi Organics access to market outside of our own online store, masodiorganics.com. So super happy to also have Yaeesh on the seminar with us.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz. So maybe just to kick it off, I'm going to start with a question. Because this conversation today is around market access and about making sure that one, creates every opportunity for their business to access new markets, to grow, to scale. What would you say is the one thing, if you just had to summarize, and I know there's always many things, but what one key thing has been instrumental in your growth, has been instrumental in you being able to access new channels, new markets, and grow the volumes that you deliver and produce?
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult to pinpoint just one thing because it's a concoction of all of these different components, and some of them you've already touched on, pricing, costing, and so on. But for Masodi, it's really been marketing. I think it's the heart of what we do. And it's also the one part of the business whose impact we've really gotten to see as time went on. I mean, who knows if the likes of Takealot and Clicks, and Pick and Pay and Wellness Warehouse and all of these, B2C customers that we're seeing would have known about the brand if we didn't sort of like take marketing seriously. Who knows how much more difficult our journey in retail, competing with multinationals who have been around for longer than we can imagine, how it would have been, right? Without creative and interesting and, realistic ways of marketing with a limited budget. So I think marketing really has been the core of the business and the core of what has allowed us to tap into more market opportunities for the brand.
Awesome. And you're really good at that. I mean, if anyone just needs to go and check out Masodi Organics socials to see that they really are on point. And I guess that if one takes a step back from that, it's really about understanding your customer, isn't it? And understanding your target market really well. How have you manage to gain those insights so that you know who you want to talk to, but more importantly, what you should be saying?
I think first and foremost, you need to care, which is why I think that the passion conversation, as much as it becomes redundant over time, it still matters. Going into an industry that you care about, going into an industry that you are curious about, and an industry that you believe is important, is going to make you curious, right? You want to engage with people, you want to talk to different people, even if you don't think they're your target market, you might be surprised. So I think that sense of curiosity and that sense of concern for people, how they feel, how they look, how accepting of themselves they are or not, really was the starting point for me. And I think then that filters into the way in which we communicate with people. You know, when we're talking about whether it's beauty, I need to know that we're not just talking about this superficial thing that says, oh, you are flawed, let's fix you. But it says there's aspects of you that you know to be true. How can we help you enhance that? If you're talking the energy problem for those who are in the energy sector or in the mining sector, whatever it is, there's a core need that always goes back to people and their need, that is actually going to allow you to communicate better with people and feel like and to allow you to feel really heard by people, if you can always go back to what they need and empathize with them. So I think that's really the starting point for us. And as people start gaining trust for your brand and for your voice and for the information that you share, they start opening up. And before you know it, you actually have a real and tangible and authentic community around what you do. And people start sharing quite some deep stories that are personal.
And tell me something, if an SME in the room, a business, was suddenly presented with a potentially game-changing opportunity, so maybe they've been knocking on the door, or they've been part of a supply development program for Woolworths or whomever, and now suddenly the opportunity jumps at them and presents itself, and it's could involve 10xing what they do from 0 to 100 in a very short space of time. What advice would you give them? What are some of the boxes that they really need to tick and make sure that they've got covered?
Yeah, I think some of them you've already touched on, but I think if I was to simplify it, I'd think of three things. The first thing is, do I actually have the capacity to deliver what this institution is asking of me? And there's nothing wrong with not having capacity. I remember when Masodi went retail, we actually didn't have capacity. We said to the retailers that wanted to list us, hold on a little bit, let's get our capacity in order, and then we'll come back and revisit this deal. So I think that will probably be on the top list, on the top of the list.
But
for
how
everyone.
many of us are brave enough to say, sorry, not right now, no thanks, I'll wait a bit? Most people would jump at it, right?
That's true. It wasn't really a not right now. It was we're still talking to some country. You need to figure out how to finesse the English. So finesse the word, because yes, it's fair what you're saying. If you say not right now, they will pass the opportunity very likely to someone else. But you do want to say to people, we're working on some contract manufacturing opportunities with some partners. Let's just finalize that and get back to you quickly and give you some timelines on when we think we can deliver.
That's good communication, really, hey?
Right.
Being
And I think
upfront.
right. And I think the second part is really honesty on the demand. It is possible to get access to market on the back end of no demand for your product. And I'm talking about this from experience. There were two opportunities that we got at the same time. One opportunity really blossomed and became this success story, but another opportunity, there was no demand in that particular space. But these opportunities can actually present themselves because there is that sense of hope that maybe you would do well. And in that case, I would say, try to not play too safe, but don't cast your net too wide. And what I mean by that in the retail context, it's something like, starting with a smaller list of stores. That's doable, that you can use to test on a smaller scale. If it succeeds, you can always scale it up. If it fails, then you fail on a smaller and more realistic sort of like scale. If it's mining, if it's heavy metals, if it's whatever other sector, the same principle applies. So be realistic about spaces that are not yet tested, and test them on a very manageable scale, such that if things don't go well, it's not catastrophic, but also things go well, you can scale on the basis of data-backed insights.
Fabulous. Great answer. Thank you. Another question for you. How have you, I mean, you guys have grown pretty quickly. It's not an overnight success by any means, but it's, you put in the work, but it has, it feels a little bit like a snowball rolling down a hill that's getting bigger and bigger, and it's starting to, become quite a prominent brand. In fact, I noticed in the chat that someone said, "Oh, I used one of Liz's products this morning." So that's already a great validation. Woohoo. And how have you managed this growth and maintained your standards? Because that's really, there's things like cash flow to worry about. We're talking about market access today. And for a lot of people, market access is about just, I need to get the client and then I'll worry about everything else afterwards. From your perspective, how have you managed that growth?
I think, it becomes very difficult. Growth is painful, right? As in any other part of life, growth is painful. But I think one of the things that I always keep as my focus point is at any given point, I need to know that I can deliver quality product to the customer at all times. And that is the guiding principle that I use for everything I do. So if something doesn't enhance this mission of mine, I deprioritize it from my list. Some of the initiatives we've had to do, and we're currently in the process of, improving on, is, improving or enhancing our third-party manufacturing, for example. When you're growing, sometimes in-house manufacturing can become a lot more, distracting from other initiatives, especially when you're cash strapped and especially when you have a smaller team. Can we find partners that can actually work with us and help us grow on this journey without giving us the headache of quality and all sorts of things? Can we start thinking more intelligently about how we market the business? Can we outsource some of the business elements? Example would be, some of the content creation, we've started outsourcing part of that. Who else can we bring onto the team that can actually help unlock, more efficiency in our processes and systems and how we just run things? So I've really had to reconsider, I guess, the team element side of things, energy and resource allocation side of things, and also just really focusing on who are the key partners that we think can actually help us grow, because there is a roof that you hit when you're moving on your own. Things like being part of the Kundwana program, for example, have been really helpful for us, right? Access to the mentorship, access to the funding, and access to all sorts of things are some of the things that collectively actually help with what is seen as an overnight growth.
And would you recommend those that qualify, those that might have the opportunity to join like a supply development opportunity or program? Does that give you a foot in the door in your experience?
Oh, absolutely. I think with one of the retailers that we joined, we went through the supply development program, which you start, through the trainings and the seminars and whatever, and all those initiatives. Even if you're not listed, you can get a little impatient, but they're so important because they allow you to network with the team. They give you a more intimate view of what they need. The information that Yaeesh was sharing now, not everyone has access to those kinds of things. So you get to engage with the teams, and ask them all your relevant questions. They get to know about your brand before it booms. I mean, I pitched to Pick n Pay twice before they could say yes to me. And part of the benefit also is that once you sign on, being part of the supply development program is really helpful in terms of the trading terms, because there is an element of support there. Sometimes, your trading terms are a bit more favorable than they would have ordinarily been if you are not on the program. If you're struggling with marketing, they can come in and support. If there's gaps and opportunities that are not utilized by some of the multinationals, they can slot you in. So we've definitely enjoyed a lot of opportunities. I mean, Takealot, 3 months ago, we're doing some interesting stuff. They've put Masodi with L'Oreal and and all these big brands on the main banner. And
you mean they put L'Oreal with Masodi, you mean?
There you go.
That's great. Thanks, Liz. So I'm going to maybe just bring Yaeesh back in, and I want to ask Yaeesh from that perspective, how does Takealot support new and potential new vendors or, the smaller players on marketplace? What sort of support structures are there in place for anyone who might potentially be interested or, just in general wanting to start knocking on the doors of larger organizations like yourself?
Anton, the reality is that the marketplace is built for exactly that. So the way we see it is we're democratizing e-commerce, we're democratizing retail and allowing access for anyone to join in. So yes, there was like certain campaigns where you do beauty, but each and every day.
Sorry, we got a bit of interference
feedback
there.
rate.
Go
No
ahead.
problem.
Yeah.
So our platform is designed that it has a marketplace which allows access to any emerging brand or small brand or large brand on the marketplace that sits alongside established brands in those same categories. What it does is it allows small brands to, through the legitimacy of Takealot.com, stand up against maybe a more established brand and lets them compete on an even footing, which allows a seller to then bring their brand forward, highlight its benefits, its value propositions, its uniqueness to consumers, and allow the consumer then to make a very informed decision on a side-by-side basis. So our platform is the enabler to allow small businesses to grow in and to be access into that market. So that is the marketplace itself. On top of that, and in addition to that, we've got a program, for example, within the marketplace called Marketplace Brand Program. And what we are trying to do there is we are encouraging brand owners to legitimize their brands, to get the right trademarks and patents and copyrights that are required that firstly protects them. And once they go through that, then we support them in that journey of building a brand identity. So whether it be protection on site and ensuring that they get the right compliance support that they need to be able to grow that brand, or whether it be in marketing support and being able to give them access to particular marketing support. So for example, a few weeks ago, we had one of our top brands in Marketplace joining in and doing live shopping alongside our other brand, which is that, and that's a nice access point into grow the brand. So our brand program is one that we're extremely excited about, to be able to encourage brand creation, uniqueness, and then support that through the selling journey by giving whether it be access into the warehouses or marketing campaigns.
Fantastic. So we sort of getting to the end of things, and I am going to ask the two of you to just stay on sort of a couple of minutes after the end of the webinar, if you don't mind, just in case there are. I see there's a gazillion questions coming through in the chat that for both of you, but we obviously just cherry pick a few. But maybe just to conclude before I just close off with some closing slides and thoughts. What three things would each of you, from your own particular side of the fence, so Liz from a supplier perspective and Yaeesh from a procurer or customer and enabler perspective, what three things would you advise budding entrepreneurs wanting to grow their market access, wanting to access new and bigger markets? You don't have to unpack them, just tell me your top three. So I'm going to start with you, Liz. What three things would you recommend?
Well, I would say, first of all, access to market is scaling something that you've already started. So make sure that you've got a solid base. If it's a product, if it's a service, make sure you're confident that if it's scaled, there is demand for it. The second thing would be, again, the issue of capacity. If an opportunity for access to market came in, make sure that you're almost ready. And it doesn't have to be fully ready at the time, but there just must be some stuff that you can switch on and off as and when needed. So even in your small scale, there's always opportunity to say, how can I make sure that if the opportunity comes, I can quickly switch it on? And then lastly, I would say, customer service becomes important. You look at the same way you look at your B2C customer. If it's a B2B customer, you need to always look at the likes of Takealot. You need to look at the likes of retailers as your customers now, and how can you also serve them? What is it that they need from you that you can actually do to enhance their business? Is it storytelling? Is it, channeling your traffic already to those platforms? So really think about also what you can offer to them, even as small as you see yourself.
Brilliant. Thanks, Liz. How about you, Yaeesh? What three pieces of advice would you give?
Thanks. Yeah, I wanted to, I think there's, Liz has spoken a lot about entrepreneurship, so I'll maybe narrow down on the e-commerce side of things in my feedback. I think the first thing is understand your product listings. That is, in the absence of the touch and feel and the ability for a consumer to physically engage with the product, make sure that you are communicating your product adequately and appropriately to your consumer. There's no such thing as too much information when it comes to explaining your product. Make sure that you understand how to best pull at the heartstrings and pull at the mind strings of that consumer and give the best foot forward for your product online. Something that we believe is, and we see is underutilized by emerging e-commerce players, not fully grasping and absorbing the importance of the product listing. I think the second piece is truly engaging with customer feedback. And online customer feedback comes in many ways. It comes in the form of reviews and ratings. It comes in the form of returns. And it comes in the form of general queries and contacts that you get. Really, truly engage with those. That is free customer survey, customer engagement that you get, and customers tell you exactly what they want, and in the end of the day, that's our objective, is to please them. So truly engage with any type of customer feedback that you get, and think dynamically about what customer feedback is. Even if a customer simply purchases a product and returns it, that's already a data point that you can use to be able to know. Even if they haven't told you anything, you can still know that this customer was not happy or didn't want the product. So truly engage in that piece. And then I think it's think fundamentals of business. So you always want to make sure that you are delighting your customer in what you commit to. Make sure that you can keep the customer promise fulfilled. Don't overcommit to delivery times or to quality or to certain volumes. Stick to within what you can maintain within your customer promise. That would be my
Fantastic. Thank you both so much. I'm just going to share my screen one last time and just give us some closing thoughts before we move on to question Q&A. So just a quick summary of some of the things we've discussed. Essentially, what do sellers want? Us as the seller, we want to be able to sell, obviously, as much as possible. We want to get the right price. We want to make sure that the platform or channels that we are accessing are appropriate and we can service them in the correct quantities. We need to consider our quality and compliance levels. We need to negotiate those payment terms. Liz mentioned that, it's a big part of the piece as well. And any extras that we deliver, ideally, we'd like to get paid for. That would be like making sure that you factor in things like your logistical costs, etc., so that they don't surprise you at the end of the day. From a buyer's perspective, what are they looking for? If I can summarize, they want the product or service that meets their needs at the right price. It's easy to find and procure. They don't have to do too much hard work. It's reliable. The qualities and the volumes that they need are there. This applies whether it's a product or a service, actually. Can this service-based business deliver what I need them to do? Quality and compliance is in place. The payment terms are acceptable. Obviously, being BEE accredited adds a lot of value to your attractiveness to many of the larger players. And then finally, are there any extra delights? Liz also spoke a lot about customer delight strategy. How do you really blow them away? What can you do to exceed expectations? And then just finally, key takeouts. What do we need to consider? And what are some of the things that we need to do? Know your customer, know your costing and pricing. Make sure you've got the necessary sale tools in place and your marketing presence is professional. Have you got all the necessary certifications that are required to give you the best opportunity to grow your market access? Can you finance the deal? Very important. Start now to make sure that when the opportunity arises, you can take advantage of it. And then finally, a real bonus is things like after-sales service, environmental compliance, the strength of your brand, the visibility of your brand. That's something that Masodi does really well. Last final thoughts, in order to become market ready, in order to access new markets, you need to be market ready, understanding what the market needs. Think about things like cash flow, quality management systems, compliance. As you move up the ladder, these things become more and more important. Market access is a stepwise process. Liz shared some really useful insights around. Don't have to list in 100 stores initially. You can start with 10, learn the lessons and then scale. And then finally, there is support available. Very excited to announce that we at Fetola are launching a market access incubation program soon, specifically focused on market access and helping businesses just like yourselves to scale, to become market ready, to access new markets. So watch this space. If you haven't yet done so, please sign up to be part of our ecosystem. The team will pop the links in the chat so that you can sign up easily and stay close to us. I want to just thank Yaeesh and Liz for a really great conversation. I think you would all agree that they're both amazing. They gave up their time, and we're really grateful that the two of you shared your insights. Thank you so much. And then finally, before we close, perhaps we can have a couple of questions. If someone wants to put their hand up, maybe Mahlatse will just manage the muting or unmuting, and we can have time for a couple of questions. But that is the official close of this particular webinar. So thank you everyone for joining. Cool. Do we have any questions?
I think you can lift your hands you can raise your hand if you have any questions and then respond.
Or you can pop it in the chat if you're shy. Okay, and we will be sending the link to this session. So Suzanne, I see you've got your hand up.
How's it, guys? Thank you. That was such a great talk. Yaeesh, I posted in the chat, but maybe you didn't see it. I'm just curious what you think about now that Amazon is coming into the market. Is that really going to dilute our brand as in local is lekker and getting locally made, locally produced brands supported and bought in the local marketplace? Do you think we have a threat on our hands, or do you think competition is good for all of us?
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, interesting question. I think, first of all, I think that the success of a local is lekker, as you put it, initiative, and I interpret that as in purchasing local so that we can stimulate local production and then local economic growth, right? That's what we all want to achieve. That is, the success of that is going to be decided not by the suppliers or by the vendors, but it's going to be decided by the consumer. The consumer has to make that initial conscious decision to purchase local and to support local, and that will then influence the supply chain to supply into where the consumers are purchasing. So that is the key thing. It's us, and I say us because we are all consumers, even though I work in the supply chain, but I'm a consumer myself. Me actively, intentionally choosing to purchase local, that's going to be the game changer. Who supplies those products, whether it's Takealot or whether it's any other business, they will have to align to where the consumers are. So yeah, a big international corporation entering into our market They have a track record of lots of imports. They have a track record of leveraging off their international resources. Not ideal, but it's not going to stop the local trend. That's going to be us as consumers deciding. At Takealot.com, we made a very conscious decision that we are going to be part of that journey. So we are going to enable that consumers find these local products and then make that decision for themselves, and we will support. So no, I don't think it's going to have a major impact on local. I think that's
Thanks, Yaeesh. That's great. Sibusiso.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. Yashim, I have a question for you. Since you are in the product-based marketplace, what do you think is required for one to develop a service-based marketplace? If that makes sense.
That's a good question. Sorry, Yaeesh,
yeah.
before you answer, I actually noticed that one of our mentors asked the same question. He said, does Takealot also sell services?
Yeah.
You did respond.
Yeah, no, I think that there's a distinct difference between the measurement of a service versus a product. The quality of a service is very different to a quality of a product, and understanding that delivering services is very different to delivering a product. So there are different ways of spinning it. Within Takealot.com, we've taken the decision that we want to focus on products for now. We've dabbled in services for a little bit, but what we've realized is that it makes more sense to be an expert in what you do. We are looking at potentially expanding into services. So for example, we do offer services into our seller base as an example. So we offer services to our sellers, which is not to the wider customer base, but it's an entry into a services market. I think so yeah, from a Takealot perspective, we focused on products, but we're always open and always looking at opportunities. So I think if a great opportunity comes by, we will definitely investigate. In advice for someone who's looking at setting up their own services marketplace, I think that you follow the fundamentals of traditional e-commerce. You need to make sure that your listings are good so that you're able to communicate that service well. You have to make sure that you're discoverable and people can find the different services that they have. But the uniqueness, I think, would be in ensuring that you have a good customer feedback loop that measures quality and ensures that the services that are being provided are the correct services and to the right quality that you have. You can't return a service as easily as you can return a product. So my guidance would be think very carefully about how do you measure the quality of the services and how do you ensure that you only have good service providers that come on there. That would be where I would focus my energy.
Thanks, Yaeesh. Gugu, you had a question?
Yes, good afternoon, and thanks for a very informative webinar. My question relates to pricing. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. We can hear you, Gugu.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. My question relates to pricing. So typically, as a startup, particularly in the services space, you don't often get access to competitor pricing. So it's initially kind of a explore as you go and you tweak your pricing accordingly. But I wanted to get maybe some advice from particularly Liz to see, for example, from your perspective, what do you think is the best approach to actually pricing correctly? Our services cater to both B2B as well as B2C, and we do already have pricing, tiered pricing for each. But my concern is that compared to our competitors in the market, we think we're currently underpricing ourselves, but we're not sure. How do we get that information?
Well, thank you so much for the question, Gugu. I would say first and foremost, there are platforms that you can search. Like if you look at your Fiverrs of this world, your Upworks of this world. They're like openly, you know, it's almost like a marketplace, I guess, like what Yaeesh was talking about for services, right? So you're able to go there and use those platforms to benchmark your services against some global standards. And I think that would be my starting point. But if you're looking into the pricing approach, I'd say one of two things. The first thing is, in the absence of information or the absence of insight and data, I would look at my business internally and say, what am I trying to achieve? And what you would probably want to achieve is a sustainable pricing model that is going to create a healthy margin for yourself, right? So that as you grow, you're able to afford your bills and also retain something. So in the absence of insight for now, I would say, look at what your cost base is and decide for yourself how much of a margin you want to retain and just start it from there. And then the more insight you're getting, the more it allows you to start actually saying, this is where I am and this is where I think my peers are. How do I get from here to there? Sometimes you find that you're quite overpriced. Sometimes you find that you're quite underpriced. If you're overpriced and your customer is willing to pay for it, I guess, hey, good for you. If you're underpriced and you think you can still go a bit more, but then you feel that, you know, there's a bit of a challenge on the cost side of things, this is feedback loop for you to keep adjusting on some of the ops decisions that you've made. So I guess to simplify what I've just said would be, you know, start with, this is what my cost is, add something on top so that you can retain something. And once you've done the benchmarking exercise that I've spoken about, you can actually then adjust your prices so that you can be competitive in the market besides your peers. I hope that that's helpful.
It's a great answer. Thanks, Liz. What's also perhaps
Awesome.
something
Thank
to
you.
consider as well, Gugu, is that when you are comparing yourself to the competition, you always want to compare apples to apples. So there might be a temptation to say, well, you know, I'm 10% cheaper than L'Oreal for Liz, but L'Oreal's been around since whatever 1930, and so it wouldn't really be a fair comparison. If you're in the service game, you know, you need to ask questions like, do they have any accreditations that I don't have? Maybe they're ISO registered and I'm not. They might have offices in all 9 provinces and I'm only based in one province. So, you know, it's just important when you are comparing that you're making sure that you're comparing against other businesses sort of at your level, because that's ultimately where you want to compete and win and then move your way up the ladder gradually. Cool. I think we'll have time for one more question because I can't keep these wonderful people all day long. What I can say is that if your questions are in the chat, what we will do is we'll try and send them off to Liz and Yaeesh after the fact, and maybe they'll be kind enough to answer some of them when they have time. And also, you know, I think the interest and the questions coming through suggest that we should actually have a follow-up to this conversation because it seems to have really struck a chord with many of you. Maybe Longile, how about what is your question?
Thank you very much, Anton. I'd like to confirm, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. My question is actually directed to Yaeesh. Yaeesh, I was one of the business accelerator program that you guys started last year, and I actually want to ask you this question of which I asked you back in last year, but I want to find out if this is possible right now. So as a seller for quite some time on the Takealot marketplace, we've actually came across where I was even reading on the comments right now that there are guys that have no idea on how they would use the tools that you can actually calculate your costings, as Liz mentioned right now, how you could actually calculate your costings, how you can actually calculate what kind of a pricing that you can actually price your products. And what we've done is that with the challenges that we've had on the marketplace and how we've actually overcame those challenges and the knowledge and the experience that we have gotten over the years, using the marketplace and the opportunity that we found on the marketplace and how far it can actually grow, we decided to actually create a course that actually teaches on how to sell on the marketplace. I believe that I actually mentioned this to you last year in passing, but we didn't have enough time based on those 3 days that we actually had. And now I wanted to find out from you, Yaeesh, that since we're at this stage that we are on right now, and that course is actually done, and we actually tested it out with a couple of people and introduced it into universities, I wanted to find out, is there a possibility that Takealot can actually endorse our course? And how would we go about that?
Okay, is that it? Thanks, Lungile. Yeah, I think when you look at, and this has been my approach, and I've been really on this journey for many years, is that e-commerce is not going to be solved by a single organization or entity or a single player. It's an ecosystem. There is an extremely complex value chain. There are so many complexities. There's so much technology rollout. The pace of that technology rollout is very fast. It's not possible for a single player to solve for all of the challenges in e-commerce. And what we advocate for in Takealot.com is it's an ecosystem, that there are sellers, there's platforms to sell, there are buyers, there are technical support, there are logistics, there's marketing, there's so much that goes in, and we advocate for this ecosystem. And something that we've seen globally that has been done really well is in leveraging off that ecosystem, partnering within that ecosystem to be able to find the skills and the resources that maybe Takealot can't afford right now, or doesn't have, or doesn't have the ability to invest in right now. So I think I fully understand what you mean in terms of others supporting others, and have been advocating for it for a long time. Unfortunately, within Takealot.com, we've not been able to actually create a platform for these. And I mentioned that we have like a services provider platform for our sellers. And your example of an education platform is one example of those services providers for sellers that we've been working on. Pretty light at this point, but we are busy developing it out into a wider platform that covers many other types of services. And that is the location that we hope to put services and businesses like yours that would be able to come inside and offer a service to sellers. But what we would hold accountability, we would want to make sure that if we endorse someone, that the value proposition and what they're giving towards back to the other sellers is, correct, accurate information. They look after people's personal data, that they are fair, etc. So like I mentioned, the challenges of building an e-commerce services marketplace, we currently kind of working through those to be able to ensure that when we switch it on, that you have a location with which to come onto the marketplace as a service provider, adequately market the value and the skills or the services that you provide, and us having the comfort that there's a good feedback loop. So currently we're building that at the moment. A little bit of inside information for you guys. It's not public knowledge, but we are currently building that to create, because I am completely overwhelmed with the amount of interest that there is from certain businesses like yours and others to be able to feed back into the loop. So we're busy working on it. Unfortunately, it's a bit ad hoc and not fully defined yet, but before season Black Friday this year, we'll have something really exciting to be able to share and give you a platform with which you can market your services. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. We definitely support the concept. We just need to build it. And I don't know if people know, but Takealot.com is, we're a small business. We have to always have trade-offs between what do we choose to grow and where do we invest in. But this is one of the important ones for me. So yeah, soon to be launched, and hopefully it will serve the purpose that you're looking for.
Awesome. Thanks, Yaeesh. Okay, on that note, I think I'm going to have to close. Sorry, there's still people with hands up, but I can't keep our guests here all afternoon. They're busy people. I'm sure they have things to do. So just from me again, thank you so much to both of you for making yourself available. It was fantastic. I've looked at the comments in the chat. Everyone said wonderful speakers, great insights. There's still 165 people listening even now, 20 minutes after the webinar's ended. So that's testament to it. So thanks everyone, and thank you all of you in the out there in the cyberspace for joining us and giving of your time. It was really nice to see such a engaged. There's hundreds of comments and people sharing information in the chat. It was wonderful. And we'll do this again. So thanks everyone. Maybe we'll consider a follow-up session sometime where we drill into some of the topics that we raised today.